Hi, Professor Baker.
Hi, Deion.
How are you doing?
Good.
Welcome to another episode of NLRTV podcast. I'm with Pamela Baker, a professor at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University.
Hello.
How are you doing?
This is so wonderful.
The first question that I wanted to ask you was, what college did you attend for your bachelor's, and what college did you attend for your master's?
I went to Florida A&M for undergrad. Go Rattlers! Hey.
Mm-hmm.
And once I left FAMU, I worked for several years, and then I attended the Georgia Institute of Technology, better known as Georgia Tech, for my master's in public policy with a concentration in telecommunications policy. And stayed there, did that work, wrote my master's thesis, and worked also at Georgia Tech in the economic development area for 5 years.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. I wanted to ask you, what inspired your interest in state and local government?
So I have always been very interested. I grew up with a dad who read everything he could get his hands on. So our house was always filled with books, newspapers, and magazines, and the TV was always blaring, and we could barely watch anything but the news. And so, whereas my sisters and brothers were usually aggravated, I'm one of 10 children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 10. 10. I'm the baby of the 10, and for whatever reason, I was drawn to the news, and I was also drawn to my dad's rantings and what he would say about things. And I really got to a place where maybe at about 12, I started reading the newspaper, and I wanted to really kind of argue with him. So I was doing local political reading so I could argue with my dad, and that turned into really being a catalyst for looking at our community there in Tallahassee, Florida, but also looking at what our state was doing as it related to stuff that my dad would say was happening, how he liked or disliked the governor or whatever. And so my interest really in in politics in general jumped off from my childhood and my dad loving politics. And so it just is a natural thing for me to always in my community want to get involved, stay involved, and then teaching here at the university, and this is my third university that I've taught at. It just is a natural place for me as a person who is interested, and really I have the skill level to teach it, and I try very hard to make sure that I make connections with the students. And to me, in state and local and American government, those are like the foundational places.
Okay. So you said you moved from Tallahassee, Florida to Georgia?
Yes.
Then to North Carolina?
Well, had a couple of pit stops. So I lived out in Corvallis, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington.
Were you pursuing your education still where you were doing
No, actually I was working in corporate America. I worked for Hewlett Packard for several years. And after I decided that I wanted to have children, I came out of corporate America, had my son, and then went on to Vancouver, Washington. And soon after I had my daughter there. Then we moved to New Jersey. And all of that really was because my husband is an attorney, and he was moving with his job to do various things. He's an intellectual property attorney.
Oh, awesome. That is
yes.
awesome.
So we were moving around and then found the great state of North Carolina.
Awesome. My cousin is actually a lawyer in Chicago, and he does a lot of intellectual property and stuff like that. And he was just like helping me with my creative side of the business, just telling me to always own when I'm putting out and stuff.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's awesome. Let me see. What do you feel like your role is in state and local government?
So for me, my role is clear, and that is for students to make the connection with local first and foremost. What are you doing in your community? I always want my students to recognize that you are not in an island. You're not on an island. You are in a community. It's a valuable thing to see what's going on, and especially as it relates to Black people, we are less inclined sometimes to get involved in local politics and things that are happening in the community. So my role, I think, is as a one who brings up the importance of voting, working in the community, knowing and understanding what's going on around you, and then recognizing also how local politics plays a role in state level politics. So like in class, we talked about Dillon's rule versus home rule. So what states are governing themselves, pretty much making their own policies, and then boiling down to what localities are doing what they need to do without interference from the state, or is there a dependence on the state? So I think I love to see that light bulb moment with my students to know and understand what's going on around them, and that's where I see my role.
That actually brings me to this question. Oh, okay. So the question was, can you identify a recent policy decision and its potential impact on the U.S. or Greensboro citizens that we should be aware of?
Oh, wow. A policy, man. Let's see.
Anyone in particular that you think would affect the citizens of Greensboro?
Yeah. So I would say, in terms of education, as you well know, and we probably have talked about this during the semester, and it's been all over the news, but all politics are local, is what we say in political science, right? So the idea of what monies might be allowed for doing away with your education expenses, right? So loans. And I think the policy that has been bandied about from the federal level, brought in this past 2 years, I guess it's been, from Joe Biden, and doing that forgiveness, well, that's going to definitely affect anyone here in the city of Greensboro, and especially even students here, because it was supposed to be, loans that people had that were long-term loans, but it also encompasses shorter-term loans. So you who may have a loan, it was supposed to also have money left over to help students that are also in school right now. So I think that policy, I think some people did get the forgiveness for their loans and debts, but then it got cut off.
Yes.
So
yeah, I'm aware of that.
Exactly.
I know about that.
So I'm very concerned because I know that there is so much debt, and I know that it causes people your age group, especially, and maybe a little bit older than the current college students, to not be able to buy homes, to not be able to invest in businesses, to not invest in general in their long-term goals, putting away that wealth that will cause them to have some generational wealth for their children. Those loans are super devastating on the long-term effects of how people function when they get out of college. Yes. Right? So to me, that's a big deal for the community, because there are activists within every community that would look at that and say, hey, we have students here, we have young professionals here that really could use a hand up with those monies, and we would see our community thrive and be able to function in a very different way. So I think that policy, for me, I'm hoping that it will be picked back up. I'm hoping that Congress will work with the states to see those loans really be looked at, and if not completely eradicated and done away with, at least some help for those that have these big devastating loans that they have, they're under these and can't function as they would like to in society.
Because I think a lot of college students at the moment, like myself, they feel like that conversation is kind of over with. So do you feel like that conversation isn't over with and that it's definitely going to be brought back up, or do you think it's something that they're going to just push to the side?
I don't think it's over. I think that there are enough people in the policy world and especially as it relates to the Democratic Party, because that is such a huge part of the platform. One of the promises that Joe Biden made, I think that he is likely going to do everything he can to bring it back up. Now, whether it'll come to fruition, I think it's about a 50-50, but I don't think that the Democrats in general will just give up on it, and I certainly don't think he will give up on it, because he tried it. It got a little bit of traction. It's now kind of defunct, but I think it's still on the radar.
On the radar. Well, that's good. That's a good, really good deal.
I know, right? I'm hoping.
What role, if any, do you believe that social media should have in local politics and national politics?
So I would tell you this, Deion. Years ago, meaning probably 10 years ago, I would have answered this question very differently. And when social media was having more of a meteoric rise in terms of how people were putting content out and folks were discovering various ways and places to go and communicate, right? I did not think it was a good idea. I thought it was overbearing, and I thought immediately my mind said, is there going to be a way to vet what folks are putting out there?
Yes.
That was my immediate concern.
That's a concern that they should have still at this moment.
And I still have that concern. I'm less concerned, I guess, as it relates to you all, in terms of being college students, than I was before, because I think you all are much more aware now, and you're smarter about knowing that, number one, people can put fake stuff out there. They can create all kinds of content about all kinds of subject matters, right? But I think you all are much more savvy to know and understand that where you are able to get that information is important, and as well, when you get that information, what do you do with it? I think you all are much more savvy to know and understand that you cannot believe everything you hear, and then even if you believe it, how does it jive with what you think? So how you take that information, or you all as the community, younger people especially, take that information, I think we're doing a better job at having you all understand, vet it, know that it can be crazy. You can add to it. I'm, on social media, I understand that there's a price to pay when people go rogue and put all kinds of things out there, but I also understand there's very good things.
I was in the grocery store, and this little girl said to her mom, she said, I don't want to use bar soap. I heard it carries bacteria. And the mom goes, where did you hear that? And she said, on TikTok.
Of course.
It's always TikTok.
It's always TikTok.
TikTok, yes. So I definitely do agree with the stance that
little girl was like,
she said, no, I don't want bacteria. I don't want
No, I don't want bacteria.
Yes. So I definitely get where you're coming from for that statement. What? My next question is, what frustrates you the most about American politics, and what unpopular opinion would you might have about American politics?
What frustrates me the most is that we're so divided.
The bipartisan.
Yeah. And I don't mind bipartisanship. I don't mind partisanship. So I don't mind that people have different platforms and ideologies. Cool, no worries. But what I dislike the most is when we can't understand how disagreement can happen within a conversation and stay at a place where where you are calm, where you are thoughtful, where you don't have to attack personally, that sort of thing. I don't think political discourse at this point has hardly anything that looks like civility. I think it is, people are out for each other.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's very common to see folks doing things like, did you see the where Kevin McCarthy elbowed another representative and they caught it on tape? Yeah. I mean, like childish stuff like that. So we are in a time where discourse is way divided.
It's definitely about. I personally feel like it's definitely about what pulls in clicks.
Yes.
Because what was that? Like, what does that have to do with anything about anything?
You're walking through the hall and elbowing the man.
Yeah, want to make that a news story. Yeah.
Right. And then I think an unpopular opinion that I might have is the idea of the separation of church and state, and that people have to bring themselves to politics without bringing their beliefs and their values and how that plays out. I don't agree with that. I think
you don't agree with that they should bring their beliefs and values, or you believe that they should like not take account into that?
No, I believe that we, anybody, should be able to bring their whole selves.
Okay.
If that's your beliefs, your values, your lifestyle, your community, if it's gender related, if it is about how you wear your hair, even. It could be something as simple as that. I think that we have done a better job of doing that in the corporate space, but in the government space, it's almost as if this notion of the separation of church and state means that you have to somehow separate yourself from being able to say, I don't believe this should be like this, and I'm going to vote this way, and I'm going to talk about it openly in terms of how I believe. And so I think that has been a hindrance politically, because you see so many people digging in their heels and not wanting, again, that discourse is so mired in, well, I don't like you and I don't like you, and so we're over in our corners and we cannot see each other as humans almost anymore.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't disagree with that, because with everything going on globally, even especially now, I feel like having the talks about your religious beliefs with somebody else who doesn't necessarily see from your side could be beneficial, because you need to have a mutual understanding of each other.
Exactly.
For things to move forward.
Yeah, and I think in so much so that, how we engage in life in all of our various ways, it's almost like, good night. It's almost like, well, okay, if you're a Muslim and you tell me you're a Muslim, then all of a sudden, what, you think I gotta become a Muslim? Or if you're a Christian and all of a sudden I tell you I'm a Christian, then there's something wrong with them. And it's like, how do we get here? And I think it has just escalated to the point where folks are hiding and they're not able to recognize that they can be their whole selves in this government environment that we're in and the world that we're in. And so people kind of find their community and they're like, okay, I'm just stay with my people. And it's like, but you don't learn and you don't grow and you can't love each other more and find all kinds of creativity and talent and different things. So I have a problem with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a really good unpopular opinion. I like that one. Let's talk about, what do you believe? This is multiple questions, but I'm actually just gonna make it into one question.
Okay.
How would you describe the political climate locally, nationally, and globally?
Locally, I think the political climate is much like it is nationally for the United States. Obviously, you see that people really are in their corners, as I said. People really are not open to ideas and new ways and bringing, and I'm not saying in every situation, but you see just a lot more of people being closed and fearful and wanting to do only their thing with only their people, right? And I see that as a part of our country. And I think it is just as bad locally as it is nationally.
Do you think that's post-pandemic, or do you think that we were kind of steering in that direction before even the pandemic?
I think we were steering in that direction before the pandemic. I think that whereas I hate the cliche that has come out maybe post-pandemic that maybe Donald Trump and his impact on this country and how people were emboldened to do what they already had in their minds and hearts to do, because there is no president that is going to make me do some of the things that people seem to be emboldened to have done since he was the president, starting in 2016.
Yes.
So I think the answer to that question is, before 2016, people had it in their hearts. Racism was there. All of the isms were already there. I think when people feel comfortable to allow what they really have in their minds to come out, then it comes out. And so I think what has happened since the pandemic has been just a heightening of where we know that we were.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we were having black men being killed in the streets pre-pandemic.
Yes.
And women and children. And there were many things that were happening in this country that were institutionalized. We have talked about, even in state and local government, we've talked about incarceration numbers of black males. We've talked about the war on drugs causing more black males to go to prison than any other time in our country, and that started back in the 80s. So when you think about pre and post, maybe more just that notion of, I can do it because it seems like I would get away with it. I can talk about it, social media. I can get on here and write
they
without
have a representation for it.
Yeah, exactly. I can write and nobody is going to stop me. I can find my community, and then we can.
Because he's doing it. I should be able to. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's something I think has been detrimental, and I'm not, look, presidents are presidents. I don't believe in like presidents are our saviors or our big old huge heroes in the whole country. Like, oh yes, I'm, presidents can only do so much. And I don't care what if they're an R or a D. But I think that we see different things happen, and you do have that historical value of, it seems like you are hearkening back to sometimes, or you are trying to progress past sometimes. And that's really where I see either you're trying to go back or you're seeing that there is progress that can be made. Yeah.
So let's talk about, I want to debunk maybe like this rumor.
Okay.
There is a current rumor going around social media that in 2024, around the time of the new election, there's going to be a discussion for the president to have more power or like more, I guess, more control and legislative ideas. So have you heard anything about that?
I had not heard that one.
Yeah.
So that's going around social media. And under what circumstances would it happen? Who's going to be voting for it? That's the first thing.
That's the thing. I was hoping that maybe you heard of it, because it's just a rumor. There's a lot of governmental. They're not conspiracies, but they're like, what's the word? Not explanations. They're kind of predictions. Predictions more so of how our government is becoming more self-aware, and that they're going to try to implement these changes. And one of the changes is the president having more say in just certain aspects. And what I read was legislative. So I was like,
well, Deion, I would say you'd have to, you'd also, you would have to start with the Constitution. So powers given to the president, powers given to the Congress, powers given to the Supreme Court, right? Legislative powers are not given to the president under our Constitution at all. So what I would immediately say is we would have to have a huge shift towards what would need to happen to change the Constitution. Now, as you well know, scholar, we're fighting AK-47s, AR-15s, all of those things against a huge lobby called the NRA and the Second Amendment rights that we have to have arms, right? We can't even get traction on how to get those kinds of guns off of our streets. And we don't even have anything in place, political will in our Congress to address something that would look like common sense gun laws. So I would be really hard pressed to think that you're going to now turn and give the president legislative. Nah.
You don't think that?
I think that's complete rumor.
Okay.
Because that Constitution is almost, then you got to go to the Supreme Court, right? It is almost on lockdown to the point where even when the shift of balance within the Supreme Court changes, you still have people who are unwilling to touch that Constitution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask this. Okay. This is kind of a deep question.
Okay.
In what ways do you believe that the situation in Israel and Palestine is affecting the U.S.?
Well, immediately what comes to mind, Deion, is what you see on TV. Riots, people protesting, peacefully and otherwise, people taking their frustrations out on others. We've had some shootings, right? We have had students who have protested, and now presidents of those universities are being targeted as you are not saying and doing enough, because those protests seem to be more in favor of Palestine. And those presidents are being called on to come out and say things that would look like there needs to be some balance to what you're allowing on your campus. And I think the effects, being that we have both Palestinian Americans and Israeli Americans, and then we also obviously have folks from Palestine and folks from Israel that reside in our nation. I think that it is such a huge deal for people to figure out that the United States has stood with Israel for various reasons. Number one reason being that there is a biblical connection between how the U.S. thinks of Israel and our alliance with Israel, right? Now, whether you like that or not, whether you agree with it or not, it is there.
It's what they've already built their establishment policies and stuff around.
That's exactly right. So when Donald Trump was president, he took and moved the capital, essentially the capital, back to Jerusalem. That was a big deal, or not moved it. The embassy went back, the U.S. embassy went back to Jerusalem, which is the de facto place for the Israelis as their holy place.
Okay.
So a lot of what was going on in Tel Aviv is one thing, but the holy place is Jerusalem, right? Okay. So how we view that as a country was how Israel wanted us to say, no, we have Tel Aviv, but we want you to have and recognize Jerusalem, right? Okay. So that was kind of a big deal. It was a big deal. We did it under Donald Trump, moved our embassy to Jerusalem. So I think that when we misunderstand that alliance, then in this country we begin to see people again going to the corners. So Israeli Americans and Israelis, Palestinian Americans and Palestinians, they're not going to agree. They don't like what's going on within the area. There's been a lot of history. There have been a lot of skirmishes, even a war that was 7-8 years ago that broke out, same kind of deal. And I just think this country is affected by it because we know and understand that this country has a huge alliance with Israel. Israel has helped us in some spots where we have had skirmishes over in the Middle East. They have sent rockets and bombs, missiles, right? So now here it is, their trouble has come. What did we do? Well, we sent aircraft carriers and DDGs right off the border to show force.
Yes.
Right? What we do or do not know about people who are actually doing things called probably our military folks who are not just the regular fighting force. These are special operations folks that are probably on the ground. If I'm guessing, we're not gonna. It has affected us in that we are not going to give up that alliance, and as a country, we are going to send money. We're going to send equipment, and we're going to help. But you're going to always have people who just aren't going to agree, because you have those two people groups in our country in large numbers. You know, and so and then people see and agree based on maybe something they see on TV, the news. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's not so even factual. Because again, and there goes social media. What are you seeing? What are you believing? How did something happen to cause this, and how you see that? Well, okay, well, we say Palestine might have been being oppressed, and that's why they came out, Hamas came out fighting. Or it could be that you just have some terrorists and they are willing and able to do what they did, which was to kill a lot of people and then take hostages and try to figure out how to make it be more palatable of an existence within Gaza. But, you know, that goes deep into some political things. And in this country, I don't think we fully understand all of it.
No. No.
Yeah, I know I don't.
Like the surface level and what the media portrays. Because I'll say there's a social media movement or flow of things that are kind of more lenient towards the Palestinians, and there's obviously a more governmental push of you need to support who the American government system is supporting.
I agree.
Yes. So where do you suggest for American civilians to make their decision and who and what they want to support?
You know, I think that's a tricky deal, Deion, because depending on how you frame it, depending on from what lens you...
From what perspective.
Yeah. And I think that I usually will shy away from saying I have to support one side over the other. What I usually find myself doing is trying to understand both sides.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
I love that answer, actually. Thank you, Miss Megan. That was a good answer.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. You're so easy to talk to.
Thank you. Identify. I'm going to. Where do you see yourself in 5 years in this global political climate? Like, has everything since the pandemic maybe changed your course of direction?
Just in my life in general, or politically, in terms of anything that
both.
I would.
Both.
Well, I think I would hope that I would maintain pouring into wonderful young minds, especially here at A&T, because I made the decision to work here because I wanted to work with young Black and brown students as a majority. So I would see myself still doing that. I also work over in Liberia. So my family has a foundation called Each Child Counts, and we have a school in Liberia.
Oh.
Yeah.
You said your family has? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so our school is currently a K through 8 school, and we're heading towards high school. So it's pre-K through 8 right now, and then we're heading towards pre-K through 12, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years. We're working on it, building some buildings right now to get it on to the next level.
So how does what's your position in the foundation? In the foundation.
I currently work as a treasurer on the board, and then also I, by choice, help with curriculum development, and I like to work with the teachers there at the school, trying to help them get more resources, trying to connect them with teachers here and help them to understand maybe some of the Western ways of engaging things, but also understanding that their ways are just fine. Just maybe some progress in certain areas, or some engagement in certain areas in a certain way that only teachers, and how they can maybe gain from the different aspects of teaching math a different way, or they learned how to do English a certain way because they are English speaking country. But these teachers also have to be trained and developed, and so how we work with them, partnering with teachers here, is really, I mean, it's not my thing, but I like to work with setting the connections up so that those curriculums, are always getting better and better, and the teachers are being developed and trained more and more. And I think that, for me, I am a vocalist also by trade. And so because the pandemic shut my vocal coaching business down, and I chose not to open that business back up, but go back to my first love, which is singing and engaging in all of the areas that I was previously engaging in alongside my business, which was usually women's ministry in some kind of way, singing in concerts, doing reviews where I would do something like Aretha Franklin or Gladys Knight songs, things like that. So I'm going back more to my singing and not coaching and teaching people. Me.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah.
So, I want to know more about this foundation just a little bit. That sounds so. Is you involved, and is it your sister?
So I have a brother-in-law who is Liberian. Cecil Weofwe is his name, and my sister that he is married to. They really brought the information. The first time she visited with him, they came back and she brought that information back to the family. And there are other people on the board that are not family, but mainly as a family. My husband is involved. He's on the board as well. We started doing fundraising. We do a 5K walk in 4 different places in the country every year to do fundraising. We have various programs to make sure that we are able to send items over. We send shoes, we send books, we send curriculum aids, we send clothes, we send all kinds of things, including money, right? To help not only the school but the community. It's called Clay Ashland. It's outside of the city of Monrovia, about a 30-minute drive outside of the capital city of Monrovia. But the community is really they have embraced the school. The parents are so helpful. They bring food. We have the kids are served meals every day, but they'll bring fruit in. They clean the school. There's a gentleman there. We call him Papa John. He comes, and we've built like a little guard area because we've had some things stolen before. So the community said, okay, bet we're gonna make sure that doesn't happen again. So he comes in at night, kind of make sure everything is stable. The women come in the morning, go to the pump that's on site, bring water up for the food that's going to be cooked. We have a little kitchen, we have a little cafeteria, a library, the soccer field for the kids to play. How often do you get to
go visit?
Before the pandemic, we would always go at least once a year, and then we couldn't go during the last 3 years, and now we're back to going. So we sent a skeleton crew in spring of this year, and then probably again in spring of next year. My sister and I will start going back.
Okay. Yeah. That is awesome. Mrs. Baker. That's amazing. Let me ask you, what hobbies do you enjoy?
Oh my gosh, I'm the hugest tennis fan in the whole world.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I thought you were gonna say singing.
Well, I don't consider it a hobby. That's why.
At least your passion.
It is my passion, and now don't get me started talking about Singers I love. I love a bunch of good, fabulous singers. But in terms of hobbies, I am either, and I don't play much, I'll get my racket and slap the ball up over the moon because I'm not good at tennis. But I'm either watching it, I'm either traveling to tennis matches. My sister and I this year got for the first time to go to Atlanta to the Atlanta Open and saw some of our favorite men's players there. I've been to the U.S. Open a few times. I have on my bucket list to go to Wimbledon and the Australian and French Open. So, but I'm watching. I don't care if it's the worst tournament in the whole world. If we can find it on that TV, my sister and I are watching it 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Who's your favorite player?
So women, right now, I'm on the Coco Golf bandwagon. I love Coco. And I also love a player named Iga Świątek, who is Polish. And Iga is the only player. Little fun, I know, right? Little fun fact: she's the only player that maintained wearing her Ukrainian blue and yellow ribbon on her hat. She never took it off. Whereas people wore stuff, they wore shirts, they wore a hat, they wore a flag on them, then it fizzled out. She has kept hers the whole time. And so I respect that about her as well, just as a political statement. Then on the men's side, my guy is about to retire, who is Rafael Nadal from Spain. So he's going to retire this year. He already announced that in 2024 he'll do his final matches, so I'll be crying. But then I like another Spanish player named Carlos Alcaraz, and then an American guy named Chris Eubanks came from Georgia Tech. Ooh. Yes. So Chris is on the come up, and I like him a lot. And so those are, I'm always looking to do something tennis. Love tennis. Tennis.
Oh my god. We are getting pretty close to the end.
Okay.
So, I'll ask you this one. What advice would you give to someone pursuing a degree in politics or just a career in politics?
So the first thing I would say is, when I was growing up, Deion, it was a kind of a little thing we would laugh about, and people would talk about like, oh yeah, so they're going to school for art. Like, oh, you're not going to make any money, and what are you going to do with that degree? So
they still say that.
Exactly. But they kind of say it about political science.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Because to me, I feel like you probably don't have to have a degree, but I feel like it's more beneficial if you do.
Yeah, and I think that I would definitely agree with that. But I do also know that when you do political science as a degree and you have it in your mind that you want to do something after the degree, right? So most students are either going to law school, so they see it as a way to have that foundation for law school, although it's not really needed. But I hear a lot of students say they want to go to law school, and a lot of political science students do go to law school. I just know that's a thing. But those that don't want to go to law school, you really are looking at very entry-level types of jobs. So staffers at the local, state, or federal level are certainly not being highly paid. You are coming in at a very entry level with a bachelor's degree especially. You will likely be working, say, as a person in a representative or a senator's office that might be working on writing, doing day-to-day management of their office, working with one or two other people, that sort of thing. Because all representatives and senators from the state and federal level, they are given a staff. They're given money to pay a staff. Those jobs are not real high-paying jobs. So the first thing that I always say is, yes, you need to take it a step further. If you're going to go to law school, great, but take it a step further and get a master's or a PhD if you're inclined to go that far. Because what you will find is those degrees will help you a little bit more if you're working on a staff, to have more seniority.
Yeah.
And your pay grade, because it's a government pay grade for federal, for instance, your pay grade will be higher, perhaps based on that. So just being very careful to know and look at, do internships, ask questions, talk to different people in these roles to kind of see what the positions are. And then if you aspire also to be a, council person or a state representative or senator or federal representative or senator or the president or a Supreme Court justice or any of those, right? I think it's very good to start early doing your research.
Yeah. And
knowing and understanding that, just like that art degree, the political science degree, where you just don't really, I hate for people to come to my beloved major of political science and just see it as, oh, well, I couldn't do engineering, so I came over here. I couldn't do nursing, so I came over here. And it's like, no. It says science in it for a reason, because politics is a science. The way that people engage in politics to get policies, put into place and changed and put laws into place, and how you have to work and traverse the waters of compromise and various things that happen. It's a science to it.
Yeah, it takes communication, data research, just all kinds of probably research and polling, stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of times people just see, oh, I like this lady, or I like that guy, I'm an R, I'm a D, I'm on this side, I'm on that side, but not really understand the inner workings of politics. And I think it's very important for the student of political science to really understand what you're doing. Yeah. What is it that how does state and local government, how does American government, how does political theory, how does public policy, different classes, how do those different classes play a role in the totality of what you gain to be able to go out into the world and contribute to the area of political science? Yeah.
I like that. So you suggest that if you are going to pursue a bachelor's in political science, you need to kind of build your own reality or universe around it and really concentrate in on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to be a council person, or if you're trying to be a data analyst, or whatever you want to do.
Right.
Just make sure you're putting in those traits behind that degree, or think about getting a master's.
For sure. Love it, because it's not a degree or an area where you just kind of willy-nilly go through. You really have to want to look at what's happening in your community, what's happening in your state, what's happening in your country. You have to be a reader. You have to be a person who can triangulate data and understand different theories and ideologies, and understand why different people do what they do. They say one thing, they do another. In front of the camera it's one thing, behind the camera it's another. All a part of how people are socialized in politics. Even as a student, you're being socialized in this school, to think about politics in a certain way. And I think one of my little pet peeves is when I find students who just seem like they just don't have a great love for political science. And I'm like, no, I want you to, I need you to know and sink your teeth into it.
That's a little scary. You're going into the politics, not having care for politics, which is the main problem that we're facing. Yeah,
that's right. And so you see a bunch of, like my mom used to say, a bunch of jokers who are just doing it for the paycheck.
Yeah, that's how I feel about nurses as well. Like because my cousin is a travel nurse and she loves her job. So to just know that when I've seen her work before, and it's just like, okay, you can tell she cares. So if I saw somebody who doesn't care, it's just like, ooh, that's scary. That's that's
for
scary.
sure. For sure. Yeah.
I just want to thank you for coming to be on the podcast.
You are so welcome.
I wanted to ask this last question.
Yes,
Is there anyone you would like to thank for pushing your interest in state and local government? If not, what keeps you motivated to continue your profession?
As I started, my dad.
Yes. Oh.
Yes. Yep. My dad was, as I said, he just was a lover of all things local government, local politics, what somebody was doing. He was always, going to the meetings, and we'd be like, what is he doing? He's the most, just like, okay.
Just very involved.
But he started at a time, so my dad in Tallahassee, we had our own bus boycott led by a minister there, last name Steele. And my dad was involved with Reverend Steele and the bus boycott in Tallahassee. My dad drove people to their jobs. And so from that, his inclination to stay involved, especially as it related to the Black community. And he really should have become a politician, because my dad was, he was so passionate about making sure that things were done correctly. And when he saw things not being done correctly, he, without even there being a meeting, my dad would be like busting up in the people's office and talking to city commissioners and county commissioners, judges.
Wow.
Like, Daddy, I'm supposed to do that, but anyways. But yeah, so he was that guy, and he just inspired me and built that love into me for wanting to have a say. I mean, that's really, I'm a big mouth, and I'm a huge big mouth, and I will have a say. I'm always for the underdog. I'm always the one who will say, you know what, I don't have to think like you, or you. I think like me. And when I say that I am willing to get in the fight for someone who is being marginalized, who's being pushed out of the conversation, I'm willing. I'm the one who is like, I don't care if you like me or not. What I'm trying to say is that's wrong. Yeah. And you really should, address the fact that you're trying to do something either behind the scenes or, kind of clandestine way. You're trying to treat somebody with a short spoon, as my mom used to say, and it's like, no. So, I am so determined to instill in my students the fact that you don't have to let anybody treat you a certain way. Know your rights. Know what's going on around you politically. Know and understand that people are not going to give you anything. You need to go and seek. You need to go and be a part of movements. Be a part of, when you see something is wrong, make it your business to be a part of it and add your voice. You all are so smart. You're savvy with technology. Look at you. And you're savvy with all kinds of different things that really are going to be the backbone of this nation for years to come. And I just want, state and local gives me that opportunity to say, hey, start here to see at this smaller local municipality level, see how it really is just a little microcosm of the nation. It really is. Yes. And so how I get you all to connect is what I care about.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Baker. Thank you, Mr. Baker, for birthday, Professor Baker. And
wait a minute, Mr. Brim.
Oh, Mr. Brim.
Yes.
sorry.
Baker is my married name.
Your married? Oh, sorry, Mr. Brim. Thank you for instilling the passion in her to teach me and other North Carolina A&T students, and just having passion for what you do. Thank you so much for doing this interview, Professor.
You're welcome, Deion. It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you.
Okay. Interview is over, guys. Bye. See you next time.